Well, it's Fabric Tip Friday again, and this time it's actually, the tip's not going to be on fabric, but it's going to be on prepping your airframe and the different parts that you're going to be applying fabric to. And it's going to be following along using our epoxy prime that we put on the metal parts, whether it be aluminum or chrome moly. The first one I want to talk about is your aluminum. Whatever treatment you're comfortable doing, whether it's an Aludyne or an acid etch and Aludyne, or I see a lot of the RV guys will just actually scuff. The main key is, to me, is the scuff. I mean, brand new aluminum almost has an oily, naturally you want to clean that. But even if it's Alclad or whatever, this is just a foam sanding, sponge that you can just kind of rough. And we're not talking about sanding away. We're not even talking about taking the top Alclad off. We're just talking about fogging it a little bit to get it, just some kind of an etch there. And if you do the acid etch and Aludyne, that usually will take care of that. And then naturally you want to clean the gray, with some kind of a degreaser or whatever when you're prepping to get ready to put primer on. The other part is your steel parts. And if you're building a new airframe or whatever, as we all know, any kind of tubing, chrome moly or whatever, it comes with an oily. Just to show you, I mean, you already know this. I mean, you look at that and you say, well, it's brand new metal tubing, but I mean, we see what's on it there. I mean, it's oil. You don't want to be painting oil. In our process of putting the epoxy primer on, our instructions calls for you to get it, degreased, and then whether you have bead blasted your fuselage or your part, or sand it, scuff it, some way of roughing it up. And chrome moly is going to be hard to, like a sponge right here, but you're going to want to use something. Just if you're just going over the fuselage, and it kind of relates back to that video I did on painting on something that you haven't scuffed. You don't want your primer to not stick to what you're trying to do, and it's creating a surface for the paint to grab on. And I'll get into that maybe on another video, but it goes back to the primer. If you've primed it and it's been 2 or 3 days, I have to look at the book, there's a time frame there, then you want to scuff it because it's going to fully harden out and it's going to get a surface on it that's hard for paint to stick to. So with that said, you want your metal, any metals you have or aluminum, you want it scuffed. Your chrome moly, you want it degreased, and you want it somehow etched, scuffed or bead blasted or something to have a little edge on it. I just thought to do this one today. I had engine mount for my J3 that needed some primer on it. I'm not ready to start at that project, but I didn't want it to rust anymore. So I just had some epoxy gray and I went on ahead and put that on. Our epoxy primer comes in white or gray, and when you mix it 1-to-1, it'll go through the gun pretty well just that way. You don't have to reduce it. You can reduce it a little bit with 40/70 if need be, but it comes out with a surface that's just orange peel free, you might say. And that's where you will, if you wait a couple of days, you might scuff it just because it is slick. I have another new product. A lot of the guys, the Stearman guys, and the people that build the AgCats, I got a couple companies, and several aircraft companies, they say, we love your primer, but there's some mental situation with older time guys, they want that chromate look epoxy primer. When I started tinting my primer, it looked great, but I called the company that I work with on some of the chemicals in this, and they told me that if I added the wrong amount of tint, it may hinder the characteristics of it, and I didn't want to get in a situation that someone out there is using a product that's not up to the standards that you want it to be. So I found one other product that was allowed a certain amount of tint. This will be our new product, and I can actually tint it in any color. I'm going to try to come up with a chrome moly color, maybe a couple different colors, but it's actually a true epoxy primer that can be put on. And when you're going to put the glue on, whether it's Polytac or whoever's glue, ours or whatever, if it has a solvent base, it's not going to affect that. I tell people that you can put the glue directly on our epoxy primer, and I don't believe there's going to be a problem. Some of the other primers out there, the chromates and the different ones, I actually recovered a set of tail feathers on a Super Cub that had brand new Univair tail feathers put on in '96, and this was about 4 years ago, probably. It was about 10 years old, and the tail feathers was had holes actually rusted in them. They had just covered a yellowish primer. When I started building airplanes and stuff, Kenny Blaylock always told me that primers are made for priming to put paint on. So I tell everybody, I always feel like it's best to go ahead and put paint on your tail feathers too. This is an epoxy. I don't believe it would give you that problem, but I just like to see people put paint on. We have a process that we tell people to go through when they put paint on the tail feathers. It don't really even matter what color you have, you're just wanting to coat it. But our paint is flexible, and the binders in it is not a flex agent, but the way the paint is made, there's a process you have to go through and put a little bit different accelerator to really get it hard. And you know, if you try to put the glue on a little too soon, it may even affect our paint a little bit. So I've had several issues in the last couple of years, people just not really following those instructions. And I have used a product off and on for the last 5 or 6 years, and I'm now at the position that I'm going to start offering that, and it'll be a different video, but it's going to be a new paint that Airtech's going to have strictly for airframes. It's a very hard, chemical resistant, epoxy type paint, but it is very glossy and shiny. So if you're doing your Super Cub and your interior bars, it's going to be really shiny just like the outside, but that frame paint is not going to be affected by any glue. It's got a rust inhibitors built into it, so I'm going to offer it in white, gray, and black, I guess, and I guess I could make it in any color, but it's a paint that is made for being really, really chemical resistant, and it's really hard, so it wouldn't be for the fabric or anything like that. But I hope that may give you some little information, especially your new guys that are building an experimental or have someone overseeing, watching with you, building a certified plane. You just want to have your metal all protected and ready to cover, or protected and covered with something before you put the glue to it. Thank you.